Okay, so we just scanned in an image at 300 pixels per inch. Right now I'm using it 100% of the size, and I scanned it in black and white. This is because I'm going to color it in Photoshop. Now I'll also show you how to deal with them in Illustrator. Okay, so now I have an image in my Project 6 folder called Scale and Diabetes. That was what I named it. I'm going to open it with Photoshop because that's where I'm going to color it. Now, you'll notice that because I wasn't being very good about being precise and clean, there may be some things that I need to clean up. So I can use the eraser tool and increase the size of that eraser tool just a smidge and go in there and knock out some of this ickiness that I have. Oops, that I've got here. So let me, I always take a minute to do this. And these are what I'm showing you here are tricks that I used in industry. I again did not learn these in college. I learned them from industry professionals that I worked with, and I sat next to them and watched them work for a day or two and picked it up. So you would just clean all this junk out. Now something like this could be problematic. Anytime you have areas of pixels where if I go to select the inside of the scale and I want to make it a certain color, it will go all the way in here because these are not connected, and it'll mess some stuff up. So sometimes I'll rescan this to get that to adjust the thresholds to get that to work. Sometimes I just grab the pencil tool, get me a couple pixels going on here, and oops, let me get the right color here, black. And I'll fill these in just to make sure that they are not going to have I call them open paths. You don't want any white going all the way through there. So normally I'm much better at making my lines darker. Oh my gosh, whoops. This is a lot of cleanup. So instead of this, I will go back to the scanner and I will rescan it with a threshold because it just takes too long. Excuse me, let me get the other scanner part up. So how do we adjust a threshold so that way we can see, I'm going to zoom in here real quick, so we can see if we're catching the detail, because I drew it in there. It's just not capturing it. I guess that's as zoomed as we're going to get here. Hello? I don't know where it went, but we'll try to get it back here. But if you have light areas of the drawing, sometimes we have to adjust this threshold, and I'll show you where this threshold is. As soon as this thing wants to behave, there it is. Where is my threshold thing? Wow, it is gone now. There used to be a thing where we could do some advanced, there it is. I had to hide my target size. I'm like, where did it go? This thing, so target size was hiding it. This thing is my threshold. If I slide one way, it goes lighter, and if I slide the other way, it goes darker. I don't know why in the world that, oh, I know what that's about. My tracing paper is laying over it. I'm trying to scan two things at the same time, and my tracing paper laid over that, and it's creating a problem with the transparency. Okay, this is much easier to fix on the scanner than it is in Photoshop, so I'm going to fix it here. All right, there we go. Let's preview that again, and this should be better. I was trying to kill two birds with one stone, but they're angry birds, so they're getting back at me. There we go. Now I can still, if I wanted something darker, to scan a little darker, I can adjust this threshold to make things darker. Okay, so that's what that's about. Or lighter. So I'm just going to go just a smidge darker and rescan it. Because I don't want to go in Photoshop and try to clean up stuff like that. It takes too long. I can just rescan it. Sorry about that, guys. I thought I was being very efficient by putting those two together and it came to bite me. All right, so let me open this with Photoshop. Get rid of the old one. And we'll get the new one up. And this should work out a lot better. Oh, much better. Okay? Now, I'm not going to take the time to clean that up because I've already wasted too much time. So I would clean this up before I go into the next process. Okay, the next process is to duplicate the background, but we can't do that until we convert this to a color graphic. Right now it's scanned in bitmap mode. We can see it right here in the upper left-hand corner. So to change it so that I can colorize it, I would go to Image, Mode, and I want to do color, but it's not selected, so I have to go to Grayscale first. Then I can go to Image Mode, and usually we use CMYK color, cyan, magenta, yellow, black. Okay, so that was Image Mode, CMYK. Now I'm ready to duplicate this layer, because in case you mess it up, you want to have that back there. And I'm going to add a layer. So I'm in the Layers panel. Adding layers, duplicating them, you drag them to the little New Layer panel or button. And to create a layer, you just click on that little New Layer button. Now I typically will put my line art, I'm going to put line art, my line art layer over my painted layer. So this is going to be my paint layer. So I have line art, paint, and then I have my background. I'm going to turn that off just because I don't need it. Now this, if you were to have watched the videos on my YouTube channel, this is one thing that is missing on the example. I believe I have a rowboat or a canoe or something that I'm doing on my YouTube channel. But this is what I was missing on that. On the line art layer, so that you can function better, you want to click on that and you want to adjust the blending mode, which is found right here. It says normal. You want to take that to multiply. And what that does is it just makes sure that the colors underneath it show through. All right, so how would I colorize in Photoshop? Well, there's a couple different ways that I will attack this. First, I love using either the Magic Wand tool or this Quick Select tool, and I can select in areas of my artwork. I can hold down the Shift key or click and drag. I can get areas of the artwork. Now I can also hold the Alt key if I want to deselect areas. I was like, wow, it selected some of these points right here, little scale markers. And so if I hold down the Alt key after it's already selected, it will deselect. Shift selects more things. Alt takes away selections. So it just selected a whole bunch of stuff I didn't want. All I'm wanting is this white part in here. So again, if I hold the Alt or Option key down, I can deselect areas. Now that's one way to do it. Now I'm going to deselect everything for now. I also like to use, and it's real simple science, I like to use a Magic Wand tool. Basically what it does is it selects this takes a lot less time. It just selected all of that white area around the scale. Okay, I don't have to click and drag for that. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to get off of the line art layer. This is the hardest thing to remember. And I'm going to go to the paint layer. And let's say I'm going to fill that with a color. I'm going to fill it with, say, a gray or something. Well, here you can do grays, but you don't have much control. Okay? If you want to use an actual color that you've mixed, you can go over to swatches. You can grab a gray, and then you can fill it with this foreground color that you just selected. So I'm going to go to Edit, Fill, and instead of white, I'm going to choose foreground color, which means this right here, this button over here on the toolbar. That's my foreground color. I hit OK, and it fills it. Okay, nothing too crazy or fancy. I could also do gradients. Maybe that's a chrome type thing. There are gradients here. So I could gradient fill that by clicking and dragging on it. So there's a gradient. There should be a gradient device here. I don't use Photoshop as much as I have in the past, so I'd have to dig for my gradient options as far as various colors of gradient. I know you can do it, I just have to do a little research. Now, let's say that the other areas here are black, so I get my Magic Wand tool. I click in here because I want that to be all black. Now, you want to go to your line art layer when you do this, typically. Then I go to my paint layer, and I can fill that with a deep, dark black. So I'm going to choose kind of a deeper, darker black, maybe blackish blue. Don't want it completely black. And I can go to edit and fill, and there's a keyboard shortcut for that too, and fill it with foreground color. Okay? So I just colorize the scale. Now it still looks a little, the colorization looks a little flat. If you want to give it a little bit of personality, this is the fun part. This is how we did it when I was working at the kids' magazines. We would get the, behind the pencil tool, there's a brush tool. And you can, up in the upper left-hand corner, you can control all the different kinds of brushes. If you want a textural type brush, you've got this. You can make the size bigger. And you choose different colors. So maybe I choose a lighter blue. And make sure you're in the paint area. And I can sit there and brush in. Oops, let's not get so sloppy. I can sit there and brush in details. Okay, this is kind of fun. Now, I'm not doing a really good job of it, but it is kind of fun. I'll try another different technique that I do. I typically do, oops, let's step backward a few times. I typically use an airbrush style when I'm working. So the airbrush style is more of a softer brush. And I have the ability to change opacity and flow up here. So if you want to soften it, you can pull that back. The flow, if you want to make it heavier, it'll go real quick out there. It's kind of like spraying a spray can. But if you want it to come out a little softer, you can adjust that flow to be a lot less. It'll come out just a little bit softer. So I'm putting in maybe some highlights in this thing, and it's starting to bring it to life. Okay. Now these aren't the best highlights in the world, but I'll straighten them up here in just a second. So I'm just throwing a few highlights in here, and it really starts adding depth to this thing. Like, wow, that just starts to improve that a whole lot. I might even go into the dial of this thing and add a couple little highlights in here. I could even go into the gray area. Let me get a darker bluish gray, make my brush a little smaller, and add just a few little highlights into the silver part of this. Okay, so now it would be great if I had a Wacom tablet. This would be perfect versus the mouse, but right now I just have the mouse. But you can see even with a mouse I'm doing okay. Now this does not, it still looks a little sloppy, but you can see that I got midtones, highlights, and shadows. Now I'm going to turn off the line art layer, and you can see how ugly that looks. It's really weird. Now what I will do on something like this, because I want it to be softened, I run a filter on this. So I'm going to select everything. Now we have to be careful. If we're in CMYK color mode, we oftentimes don't have all of our filters. Some of them will be grayed out. So, you know, we don't have some things. But if I'm in RGB color mode, I'm not going to merge those layers. I have all of my filters available. So you may work in RGB mode just to work with all your filters and then convert it to CMYK later. So let's say I want to do, there's a filter gallery too. But let's say I want to do something kind of Andy Warhol-like. So let's do Pixelate. I'm going to do a color halftone. This is something I think I showed before. 25. What it does, whoa, that's too big of a circle. Let me undo that. Let me try that again. This is the Pixelate color halftone, and let's do a 10 and see what happens. And it looks kind of crazy up there. Then I turn on the line art. You're like, wow, that looks like a comic book. That's pretty cool. So some people like that comic book sort of look. Another way to do it is maybe, oftentimes if I want it to look really airbrushed, I will do a slight blur to it. I'll do a Gaussian blur, which blurs these, it softens this a little bit. Okay, so I'm softening my edges, and then I will add a little bit of noise. It's usually not that much. It's Gaussian noise, and I take it down a little bit and hit OK, turn that on, and it feels as if it's been kind of spatter painted. Almost airbrushed. I don't normally have the noise up that high, but you can see how quickly I just colorize that thing and I'm ready to go. Okay, so if you guys read graphic novels, oftentimes the covers of the graphic novels have been hand generated as far as the line artwork goes. You know, this stuff here is hand generated. They scan it in and they start colorizing it in Photoshop, giving it this kind of depth. It's kind of fun. Now, I usually spend a lot more time on these. I can show you some really good illustrations I've done for those kids' magazines from when I was doing that. Now, with this diabetes stuff here, this is going to be a little harder because I have all these lines through here. So I'm going to now start focusing on this diabetes thing. Now, the best, I'm going to hit Command D to deselect. The best case scenario here might be to actually typeset the word diabetes and put it behind this. So I'm going to create a new type layer. Let me see, I've got that typeset in InDesign. I wonder if I can copy and paste this, and if InDesign and Photoshop, if they're friends, I might be able to copy this, go into Photoshop, create a text layer, and paste it. Oh no, it decides it wants to do it in a whole different font. So I'm going to have to tell this to be Helvetica. Let me go back to InDesign. It's Helvetica New, LT, standard 77 bold condensed, 90 point over 108. Boy, I got to remember all that. So I go back to Photoshop and I'm getting Helvetica New. Oops. Helvetica New light condensed, I think it was, but it was light condensed medium, maybe? Let me go back. Gotta remember. Bold 77. Okay. So let me get the right font. Number 77. I don't even see it. There it is. Oops, but not italic. And the point size was 90 over 108. So 90 points, 108 on the leading. So I go back here and I do 90 over 108. Now here's the 90. And I'm like, where's the 108? Well, there's a characters panel. If I go to Window, Character, I can find the leading and stuff here. So that was 108 was the leading. Whoops, not 1508. There we go. And in theory, if I scan this exactly the same size as what I created, this actually worked. Now I might not care for that color, so let me play around with a different color here. Close that. Get my diabetes thing. Tell it it's yellow. And that was a really quick way to colorize that in. Now, if you want to, what I might do is turn off the line art layer. I might get my spray can out again, or my brush. And now the bad thing about a type layer is you can't paint on it. So I have to go back to my paint layer and start painting. So maybe I want this a little bit darker for the shadows. I'm going to slightly reduce the size of my brush. And I'm just going to start painting this in. I'll paint in some orange. Oh man, I'm just so careful here. Actually, you can be so not careful here. It's almost disgusting how awful this is. But in a few minutes, you'll see that this really does come along pretty nicely. So I'm just painting in some midtones and highlight, or mainly just shadows actually. Painting these in. Doing my own custom thing here. Go ahead and get the question mark too. Being a little too much of a hurry in the question mark. Turn back on my line art layer, and you're like, oh, that's actually not too bad. That line art layer oftentimes hides a lot of the sloppy work. Now, if you have some stuff that's sloppy, like out here, and you don't want that hanging out, that orange, I don't know if you can see that orange right there. What I do then is if I've been really sloppy, whoops, excuse me, I don't like scrubby zoom. Let me take and turn that off. Okay, I don't see the option, so let me go ahead and just scrubby zoom it. What I will do is I will make sure I'm on the line art layer, and I will select the exterior of things. I just clicked on the white. Then I go to the paint layer. Okay, so I have to switch between layers. And when I hit the delete key, you'll see that all the color that's outside the line will disappear. So it's no longer there. Now, it is right here because I didn't have that selected. Okay, so I need to go back to my line art layer, select areas that didn't get selected because they were trapped. Well, trapped areas, I can hold down the shift key and select multiple areas. And get those trapped areas. and then go back to the paint layer and just hit the delete key, and it will have deleted the colors in those trapped areas. Okay, so that is super quick and dirty. But look at how much depth I created, and it was like, just like that. I didn't labor over this. The most laborious part was actually drawing the stuff before I scanned it in. Okay? So it's pretty cool. Now I'm going to turn off the line art layer, and you again can see this looks pretty pathetic. But as soon as you turn on that line art layer, it looks pretty professional. Isn't that amazing? You guys like that stuff? I think it's amazing. Now let's talk about Illustrator for a moment. Let's say I want to colorize this in Illustrator. Now in Illustrator, we're not going to get the same sort of continuous tone, you know, where we have nice highlights and shadows and that kind of thing. Illustrator is more flat. So depending on your preference, you have a couple of ways you can go about this. Now I am going to save this as a different name. Let's call it color. Now, I'm going to strip some of this down and get ready for Illustrator. So let me save it as another name. I'm going to call it black and white, because this is the one I'm going to strip down. B and W. Yeah, the color one's, he's safe. I saved him as color. Okay. So I am going to strip out a bunch of the stuff that I just did, including my diabetes text, and get it back to just line art. Okay, one layer. Now, I do clean this up before I go into Illustrator. Okay, so stuff like this, my mess up right here, it didn't matter here in Photoshop because I was using a dark color. But in Illustrator, I may want to not have some of my mess ups in here. So I may want to clean that up by erasing some of the stuff. So anything that's stray, I would definitely clean up before I go into Illustrator. All the stray stuff, clean up. Okay, so let's pretend I've already cleaned it up, just for time's sake. You would want to, before you go into Illustrator, Illustrator works on anchor points. You would want to reduce the size of this as far as pixels go so it doesn't have to think so hard. So before I go into Illustrator, I go to Image and Image Size in Photoshop, and I convert this to 150 pixels per inch instead of 300. It's less that Illustrator has to think about. Half of the pixels it has to think about. Okay? And I'm going to save this as the black and white. Now when I go into Illustrator, oh, there's our logo. Oops, File, New. I'm just going to make this 8.5 by 11. And I'm going to place this, File, Place. I'm going to find my Project 6 scale black and white. See, when you name things right, you can find them right away. And when you put them in the right place, you can find them right away. Now, this I'm going to do an image trace on. I usually zoom in so I can see some of the details. Okay. And I'm going to, yeah, I could go here and say, oh, image trace, one color, or black and white logo. And it does a decent job, but I really want control over this. So I'm going to undo that. So for you guys to have a custom image trace and have absolute control over the quality of the trace, you would go to Window, Image Trace, and you would click on the preview so you can see what's happening. And you can go to the advanced features and you can decide if you wanted a lower tolerance on the path so it'll smooth it out, or higher tolerance. Do you want fewer corners or more corners? You know, I've got two different graphics I'm dealing with, this one and this one. I probably should separate them out because they're two different kinds of graphics. And noise, I definitely want to reduce that because there was a little bit of noise in that scan. Whoops, other way. I always end up going the wrong way. But this is, now we can see why we use noise. Noise takes out some of those pixels I didn't clean up, like there's a pixel here. So if I go to higher, it takes away some of that noise. Okay, maybe a little too much because my S is starting to fill in. All right, as soon as I like what I have, I just close this image trace. The next thing, and you guys, I've shown you this before, but this is just kind of a review. The next thing I do is I expand it. There's an expand button. And then I get the white arrow tool, which is the direct selection tool. I click and drag over the bounding box that's around this, and I hit the delete key once and then another time because you don't want a white box. Now it's a matter of colorizing things segment by segment. So I'm using my white arrow tool. I click in a segment. If I hold down the shift key, I can click in a second segment if they need to be the same color. And I can specify what colors I want these to be. Let's say I want this to be green. And then I want this to be red. It's the Christmas scale. Or yellow. It's the spring scale. Maybe this dial, I want it to be maybe not pure white. That's super easy. Now there is no mid-tone highlight shadow stuff going on here. In order for me to, I have to fake a highlight. I have to get my pen tool, which this is not something you guys are oftentimes happy with, but I will draw in little paths, make sure they're closed, fill them with white, and it makes it look like it is a shiny thing. Okay, so this is oftentimes how people will, in vector graphics, add highlights. Okay? I think the Photoshop stuff, quite frankly, I think that looks prettier because I have midtones, highlights, and shadows working my way. Now I got more depth. Now when I get into the diabetes portion of this, there's going to be a lot of paths here. So I'm going to get my white arrow tool, and you can see I'm just going to focus just on the D. When I click on one area of white, they're not all interconnected because I have all these black lines. So I will have to hold down my shift key. This is a bit more work. And I have to shift click and find every single little white little number there and fill it then with a color. So it's a little bit of work. And again, I'm going to do it with these other ones. Now, if you wanted to make it go quicker, you could select the white area and go select same fill color, and it will grab anything that's white and you can tell it to fill it with blue. Now the bad thing about this is some of the counters of the letter, well, they were white, so I'm going to go ahead and make those white again. But it is a quicker way to deal with it. Okay, so I'm making some of these counters and ligatures or things that are filled in with blue, I'm making them white. So, you know, flat design right now is in. It's the in thing. Web 2.0 will all look like shiny plastics. But right now, flat design is in. So for me, if I'm trying to be in the in crowd of designers, I might do more of the flat design in Illustrator. But if you want to have something a little bit more contoured and something that has a little bit more color range, the Photoshop is the way to go. You can still make it look like flat design, but with just a little panache and pizzazz. Super fun stuff. Now with Photoshop, we do have one other problem that we have to talk about here. Let me save the Illustrator one and we'll place it in Design. File, save as. You save usually Illustrators as EPS files, okay? So I'm saving it as an EPS. And I'm going to call it Scale and Diabetes, Hand Drawn. That way when I look at the name of this, I know exactly what that is. This is you just hit OK on this window. I'm going to go to my Indesign file. So I started playing around with mine as a chalkboard and like you're in school and you're taking a test. I had mentioned that was going to be kind of a concept I was going to play around with. So I've already started that. But that's a whole different concept than these illustrations. But let's say I wanted to, let me get rid of my character style for just a second. I wanted my at-risk weight chart. Maybe I wanted that on that scale. I'm going to go to File and Place. Now, the cool thing about Illustrator is you can make things as big as you want. Photoshop, not so much. Let me go to my Project 6. This is called Scale and Diabetes, Hand Drawn. I'm going to place it in here. And it looks kind of crappy because of the 8-bit pixel preview that InDesign has here. So if you don't like it looking crummy, you can always right click on it and go to display performance and go to high quality, and it'll look just like what we had in Illustrator. Now let me crop this diabetes out. Okay. So if I want to, I can increase the size of the scale, and it does not degrade because it's an Illustrator file. I'm going to send it to the back. And now I can position this text carefully. Right now it's not carefully positioned. Oops, I have an extra text box in there. I can position my text. I'll spread those out so they go across each of the sides of the scale. Okay? So those might be a couple different text boxes there instead of one. Now, in Photoshop, let me show you a Photoshop problem. I'm going to move this text off for just a second just to show you a problem with the Photoshop file. So I'm going to go to File and Place, and I'm going to place that Photoshop file, the word diabetes. So let me find that. It's the scale and diabetes color. I'm going to place it out on the pasteboard, and then I'm going to crop out just diabetes. Maybe I'm doing some hand-generated text. Well, you'll see there's a white background on here, and that is maddening because I don't want the white background on there. And even if I come over here, it's like nothing's filled with white. If you do anything in Photoshop and you want the background to be white, there's a thing called a clipping path, not a clipping mask. Some of you guys have had Photoshop class where you've worked with clipping masks. Clipping masks and clipping paths are two different things. I am going to go into my Photoshop file and I'm going to apply a clipping path on this, meaning I'm going to clip the white out and keep the words and the scale. And the cool thing is since this has a white background, this will be easier done than if it had a multicolored texture background. Okay? So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to flatten this image, but I'm going to save it as a different name. So anytime I flatten artwork, I save it with the word flat. So I go to my layers panel and let me get my layers. I got a lot of things going on here. And layers, where did they go now? Here they are. I'm going to flatten the image. Discard hidden layers? Sure. Save it as color flat, because flat things are not editable. I can't edit my layers anymore once I flatten it. Okay? Now I'm going to grab my magic wand tool and I am going to click on the exterior of the object, and I need to find any little interiors that I don't want to be white either. So I'm going to hold down the Shift key and I'm going to get the counter of the D, maybe that little shadow there. So this might take a couple of seconds because I don't know, maybe I don't care if those are white. I'll leave those white. We'll see if we like it or not. Certainly the counters need to be white or clear. So I'm shift clicking on my counters and white spaces that I don't want in there. Let me check my question mark, make sure it's okay. Okay. So right now the white is selected but the image is not. So I need to make sure the image is selected, not the white stuff. But it's easier to select the white stuff than it was the images. So I'm going to go select an inverse. This is going to, instead of having the white background selected, this will have the imagery selected. Select inverse. Now the images are selected. Now, in order to do clipping paths, I bring up the Paths panel. So the white area was selected, I inversed. I go to the Paths panel, and there's a little flyout menu off to the side in Photoshop of the Paths panel. And I click on that, and I tell it to basically I'm making the selection a working path. So make work path. The tolerance, how close do you want this to the path? Usually 1 is pretty good. 1 pixel tolerance. I hit OK. And you can see now it has a vector line around there. After you make the working path, you then save the path. You can name it path 1, that's fine. And then after you save that path, you have to go to clipping path. And the flatness by industry standard is 8. I don't know why. Everything I've read says 8. That's what I use. Now, that really goes into explanation as to why. Now, if you want to make sure that no white pixels show up, like up in here, you'll see that the path does not go exactly to the edge of the graphic. What I oftentimes will do is I will go ahead and reselect the white backgrounds and I will fill them with black just to make sure I don't get any extra white pixels back in there. Now it's going to look kind of weird, but edit, fill. I'm going to use my foreground color, which right now is black. And this doesn't look right, but it actually will act right. Now these, because it's got a vector path on it, should be saved as an EPS as well. So save as and choose EPS, not TIFF, because EPSs are the best for vector stuff. Now when I go into InDesign and I go to place this, now this one doesn't have a path. I'm going to delete it. I'm going to go to File and Place. I'm going to get my EPS version. Position it. You can see that there's no white around it anymore because there's been a clipping path applied. Now there probably are still some things I need to do to this to make it palatable. Oops. Let me hold on Shift and Command and click and drag. But now I have, doesn't look as good on black as it does on white. But now I have this graphic. Now I'm going to right click on it again and go to Display Performance and go to High Quality because I can't see certain things. Now on a chalkboard this doesn't look so good because it's got these white bits. But if this were over on a white background, it would be just fine. Okay? So I just shared with you how to want to trace stuff, which we've done before, scan it in, how to colorize it in Photoshop, how to colorize it in Illustrator, and then because Photoshop puts a white background on everything, how to get that white background off by putting a clipping path. That's a lot of stuff I'm throwing at you. This is like major professional stuff, the stuff you do in the industry. Now the last thing I want to talk about is a non-photo blue pencil. And I'm going to stop the recording for a minute.